Morant with a running start. Elevates. Oh, he dunks. Oh, my goodness.
Tie game in overtime. Gasol will turn. His heave is good. Memphis on top. 7-10 remaining.
Conley now with three. Count it. A 15-point lead for Memphis. And Blake Griffin gets into it on the floor with Randolph. Hard to tell if there are any punches being thrown under there, but Griffin took acceptance.
Adams going long. Morant. He hit it. John Morant, insanity.
You gotta be kidding me.
Welcome to Grits and Grinds, a Memphis Grizzlies podcast. Grizzlies win edition. My name is Keith Parrish. The Grizzlies had a wild weekend. You might have been busy watching March Madness, some college basketball. No, us diehards were watching the Grizzlies on Friday night fall down by 29 points to the lowly San Antonio Spurs, and they fought and scratched and clawed their way all the way back to a miracle comeback victory, the largest comeback in franchise history. They trailed, again, by 29 in the third quarter. They were down 9 with a minute 30 left. They were down 6 in the final 20 seconds. They won 2 jump balls, leading to 2 made three-pointers in the final 10 seconds of the game, all to get it to overtime where they win. And then, on the second night of a back-to-back, they face their heated rival, the Golden State Warriors, and in a game pattern that's been familiar with playing this Warriors team, the Grizzlies got up. The Warriors made a run. Looked like it might be exciting, but then in the fourth quarter, the Grizzlies blew them out. The Grizzlies have now won 7 of their last 8 games against the Warriors in FedEx Forum. That includes the playoffs. Dylan Brooks is a hero of the weekend. Now, I'm going to be all over the place going back and forth between these two games. I'll try to cover them with some depth, but you know me, I'll be scattered and just dropping stats and analysis everywhere. But the long and short of it is the Grizzlies go 2-0 this weekend. They maintain pace with the Sacramento Kings. They get a little bit of separation from the 4 seed. They are 5.5 games ahead of the Suns with 12 games to play. That seems pretty secure. The Grizzlies are going to be the 2 or 3 seed in the playoffs. Now the question is, when does Ja Morant come back? Ja Morant has served his full 8-game suspension. He's not going to play on Monday night against the Mavericks. He's out for return-to-play conditioning. So Ja Morant's coming back soon, and then fingers crossed, we get towards the playoffs. We get to the playoffs. Steven Adams will be back. But the big heroes for the weekend, as again, the Grizzlies almost fall on their face and lose an embarrassing game against the Spurs. Like, the Spurs are clearly focused on the future. They are highly motivated to maximize their lottery chances. Was this a full tank job? I don't know. They did have Keldon Johnson and Devin Vassell healthy, and they're much better when those guys play. They frankly missed in the second half. They missed some of the guys, the regular rotation guys. Jeremy Sohan left this game with an injury. You might not have noticed. He's the guy with the purple hair. The Spurs missed him in the second half. Keita Bates-Diop, which again, not a big deal, but like he's one of their regular rotation guys. They ended up putting in our old friend Gorgie Jang in the second half, and I've always liked Gorgie, but he had a rough game. He committed 2 turnovers, missed all 3 of his shots, and when he checked in, the Spurs were up 23. When he checked out 6 minutes and 47 seconds later, it was a 7-point game. I mean, this was a miracle win. Even if the Spurs haven't won a game in overtime this year, even if they have, one of the worst records in the NBA, still, the Grizzlies had to do some of the work on their own. They had to make 11 three-pointers in the final 24 minutes. They had to outscore the Spurs 71-36 to end the game. And they had to get big performances from their main guys. Dylan Brooks, who maybe along with, I mean, Dylan, Desmond, and Jaren, I guess, are all co-stars of the weekend. Now, we expected a little bit more from Jaren and Desmond. Those are our best players. Dylan, of course, been having a rough shooting season, had a miserable month of February. He's been on recently, and he makes a couple of clutch threes against the Spurs, including the shot that puts it into overtime. He finishes with 16 points against San Antonio, has 3 steals, makes 4 out of 8 3-pointers. Of course, we know the encore now. The encore to that performance was him going 4 for 4 from 3 against the Warriors and also playing fantastic defense. Dylan outscores Steph Curry in the matchup against the Warriors. Dylan has 18 points, 3 assists, 3 rebounds, no turnovers. Meanwhile, Steph Curry has only 16 points, only makes 3 threes. Steph is 5 for 15 from the field. So Dylan with a huge game, 7 for 10 from the field against the Warriors, and that makes him, for the weekend, 8 for 12 from 3. In the month of March now, it's been 9 games for Dylan Brooks, and he is shooting 38% from 3 in these 9 games, averaging 2.7 threes per game. Overall, he's averaging 13.2 points per game. In the month of February, Dylan only made 28% of his threes and only averaged 9 points per game in February. Now, we don't care about the points per game. We care only about the shooting percentages. And Dylan has been making threes and has been part of an increased 3-point attack for the Grizzlies. Yeah, they made a bunch of threes in that second half, and specifically the final 24 minutes, that's including overtime, against the Spurs. They made 18 3-pointers against the Warriors. They made more threes than the Warriors did. That's tied for the second most threes they've made in a game. There's been a lot of guys who helped. I already highlighted Dylan Brooks making threes. Jaren, he made 3 threes against the Warriors. Desmond Bane made 3. Luke Kennard, huge weekend for Luke Kennard. After the loss to Miami, where the Grizzlies looked miserable, they got blown out badly after Bane was ejected. They were still down double digits when he did get ejected. But we were highlighting the rotation of the second unit, saying, all right, maybe should you bring in Kennard earlier? The Grizzlies were down by 28 at the end of the third quarter against Miami. Luke Kennard had only played 8 minutes up until that point. And so maybe should Kennard come in first, be the first wing off the bench? Well, they did. They adjusted the rotation, and Kennard was the first wing off of the bench in both of these games. Kennard played a very big role, of course, in the Spurs game. In that one, he did most of his damage in the second half. He had a pretty quiet first half. I don't believe he scored in the first half against the Spurs. But he makes that half quarter to end the third quarter that cuts the Spurs lead to like 12 or 13 at that point. And then in the fourth quarter, he makes a few threes. He makes that one with in the last 10 seconds to cut the lead from 6 to 3. So Kennard made 4 3-pointers against the Spurs, and then he comes out against the Warriors, plays a lot, and makes 4 3-pointers in that game as well. Now, I said last episode, and I honestly believe it, I don't have a strong opinion about who you should play over David Roddy, Luke Kennard, and John Conchar. I know Conchar's kind of in a slump, we'll call it. He seems to be not in the best of form, to borrow a soccer term. Looks like he's struggling a bit, laboring a bit. His confidence is down. But I do value what Conchar provides. I think Kennard has drawbacks. I think Roddy has drawbacks. I understand wanting to play Kennard more because he's the superior shooter. I understand wanting to play Roddy more because he's looked so good shooting the basketball recently, and he's a rookie, so you think his ceiling is higher. It worked out in these last 2 games, adjusting that rotation with a little more Kennard, or a lot more Kennard, less Conchar, and more Roddy. So does that mean they made the right choice? I guess. Again, I'm still throwing my hands up in the air being like, I don't know who's the best option. I think it's going to change on a game-to-game basis depending on how each player just randomly performs, the natural ups and downs, ebbs and flows of individual performance. Like Kennard in the first half against the Warriors, fantastic. Draining three-pointers. 4 for 4 in the first half. And then I think in the third quarter, you saw the drawbacks. He didn't make his three-pointers. He got relentlessly attacked by Jordan Poole. He was part of the Warriors having a massive third quarter. They scored 41 points. They got to the free throw line 19 times. A lot of that was Poole just driving right at Kennard. The Grizzlies in the Spurs game and in the Warriors game gave up a ton of offensive rebounds. That's not specifically Luke Kennard's fault. It's a issue with the entire roster, but it's exacerbated by playing Kennard more. So there's trade-offs. There's trade-offs. With Kennard playing, you get the three-pointers, they go in. When they don't go in, you get ripped apart sometimes on defense. With Conchar, maybe he provides better defense, better rebounding, but his offense, absolutely nothing. Roddy, maybe there's fewer drawbacks. He's not the elite shooter, although he's been hitting at a very nice pace recently. There's good and bad about each of these bench players. So far, they've turned the dial for more Kennard. It's worked out. I expect them to stick with that going forward because it's one of those, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Now, players who don't have weaknesses, who don't really take anything off the table on offense or defense, that would be Jaren Jackson Jr. Jaren Jackson Jr. is incredible and playing unbelievably well. Jaren has scored 25 or more in 3 straight games now. That's the first time he's done that in his career. In Jaren's last 3 games, he's averaging 28 points per game, 7 rebounds per game, 3 blocks per game, and a steal. Joel Embiid and Anthony Davis are the only other players this season to have a 3-game span with those averages. In the last 3 games, Jaren has made 27 of 37 two-pointers. That's 73% on two-pointers. In the 8 games that Ja Morant has missed, Jaren is averaging 22 points per game, 7 rebounds per game, 2 blocks, and a steal per game. Jaren's been great. He probably peaked with that performance against the Warriors. He was the best player on the court by far against the Warriors. Had 31 points, tied his season high with 31 points. Jaren was an absolute monster. They could not stop him. His body control, driving towards the basket, not picking up those offensive fouls, slithering past his defender, being able to go to the basket, get to those left-hand layups like he likes to do. Jaren has really been peaking, and now we can dial up those comparisons we made years ago. I can search through my Twitter posts. I can go through old episodes of Grits and Grinds and be like, hey, look how Jaren's stats compare at age 19 to Kevin Garnett and Chris Bosh. And look how they compare at age 20 and age 21. Now we're at age 22. Guess what? Still looks good. The per possession stats still look amazing. Now we can start getting carried away with, hey, why don't you check out Jaren Jackson Jr.'s per 100 possession stats with, well, I don't know, Hakeem Olajuwon, age 22. I mean, is Jaren going to be one of the greatest centers of all time? I don't know, but we should not put a ceiling on what Jaren Jackson Jr. is doing. The shot blocks, the scoring, the offensive mismatch he creates with his three-point shooting and his driving, and now you see him demanding the ball. He was yelling for the ball in the post against the Warriors, knowing they couldn't guard him. So Jaren has stepped up huge. He is questionable for the game on Monday night against the Mavericks. That's bad. It's obviously a huge issue whenever Jaren can play. He is the most crucial player for the Grizzlies this season. It's not Ja Morant. It's Jaren Jackson Jr. I think that the numbers bear that out. The biggest impact on winning for the Grizzlies is if Jaren Jackson Jr. can be on the court. That's why the foul trouble is such a big issue. That's why him being questionable Monday night against the Mavericks is a big issue. By the way, for the game Monday night against the Mavericks, join me over at playback.tv/fastbreakbreakfast. I'll be watching the second half. I'll be providing commentary with John Burr from Fast Break Breakfast, with Kelly Dwyer, great basketball writer. We will be in our playback room. If you have any TV login that lets you watch the Grizzlies, you can join us there. So log in to playback.tv/fastbreakbreakfast. Watch the game. We'll have the local feed on. We'll just be providing our commentary over that. So please join us there. But Jaren continues to be absolutely awesome. In the Spurs game, he had 28 points, also blocked 4 more shots. I mean, Jaren was big against the Spurs. I've talked about Dillon having a great weekend. Also, Desmond Bane just keeps performing. Against the Spurs, he had 21 points, 8 rebounds, and 7 assists. In the Spurs game, he only made 1 3, but that was enough to lift him into 6th all-time in Grizzlies franchise history in made three-pointers. He passed O.J. Mayo to move into 6th all-time in franchise history. He is only 7 threes behind Rudy Gay. So he's going to pass Rudy Gay soon. And he should move into 4th in franchise history by the end of the season because he's only 19 threes behind Jason Williams. Also, something to watch for in that Mavericks game as you hang out with us in our playback room. He's 4 assists away from tying Brevin Knight for the 22nd most assists in Grizzlies franchise history. But Bane continues to roll. Had 21, 8, and 7 against the Spurs and 3 steals and was huge in that overtime. He scored the first 8 points of overtime, scored most of his points in the final 10 minutes or so of the game, final 6 of the fourth quarter, and then that overtime. And then against the Warriors, he had 26 points on 17 field goal attempts, 10 for 17 from the field. Only got 2 assists, one of his lowest assist totals in a very long time. That snapped his streak of having 5 or more assists at 6 games, which is a career high, like I said last episode. The clutch time performance against the Spurs. Yeah, you're playing the Spurs, and they're not very good. But it was great to see because the Grizzlies have struggled recently in the clutch. They've struggled kind of all season in the clutch. The Grizzlies, before the Spurs game as a team, were 41% from the field in clutch situations. This is the arbitrarily defined clutch situations that the NBA uses. Last 5 minutes of the game, score within 5. Against the Spurs, the Grizzlies were 8 of 9. 8 of 9 from the field. That'll do. 89% on field goal attempts in the final 5 minutes of the game when the score was within 5. And Bane had really struggled this season. His clutch numbers, gross. He was shooting under 36% in clutch situations. After the Spurs game, where he played very, very well, after the Spurs game, he raised his field goal percentage in the clutch to 41%. But here's a funny stat. This season, if the score is within 5 in the final 5 minutes of the game, all right, Bane is now 41% from the field. He's only shooting 24% on threes. He's 5 for 21 on three-pointers. Ja Morant, in the same time frames, is 18 for 53 on field goal attempts. That's 34%. Ja's missed all 7 of his threes. Jaren is only 5 for 15 in clutch situations. That's 33%. He's missed all 5 of his threes. Dylan Brooks, the only other Grizzlies player to attempt 10 or more field goal attempts in clutch time this season, 9 for 17 from the field. 53%. He's 5 out of 10 on clutch three-pointers for Dylan. Good job, Dylan. By the way, Tyus Jones is 3 out of 5. Konchar's 3 out of 5. Roddy's made all 3 of his clutch field goal attempts. Hey, now. Luke Kennard is 1 for 2. Of course, to highlight the arbitrariness, I don't know if that's a word or not, to highlight the arbitrary nature of the clutch cutoff. Like, Luke Kennard does not get credit for the three-pointer that cut it from 6 to 3, even though I think we would all say that was a big clutch shot from Luke Kennard. So that shows the flaw with these NBA.com clutch statistics. But Bane came up huge in that fourth quarter against the Spurs and overtime specifically as the Grizzlies, pull away for that 6-point win. Also going back to the Spurs game. Okay. As I continue to bounce around, we have Tyus Jones with 20 points, 10 rebounds, and 10 assists. Add another 20 and 10 game to Tyus Jones's tally. I'm contractually required to point out he had 0 20-point, 10 assist games in his career before this season. He's now up to 6. He has his first career triple-double. He didn't even know he had it. It seemed like in the walk-off interview with Rob Fisher He didn't realize he'd gotten that many rebounds. So Tyus Jones, playing his younger brother, Trey Jones of the Spurs, Tyus Jones delivers once again. Tyus Jones in the Warriors game puts up 14 assists and 0 turnovers. The only other player in Grizzlies franchise history to have more assists without any turnovers is Jason Williams. So Tyus goes for 13 points, 14 assists, 0 turnovers against the Warriors, following up the 20-point, 10-assist, 10-rebound game against the Spurs. Now, another notable thing about the Spurs game that I'm definitely not going to omit from this episode is not only did they adjust the rotation to bring in Luke Kennard and Santi Aldama as the first subs as opposed to John Conchar and Santi Aldama, they went 10 deep in this game, changing the plan to play 9 deep for a while. Taylor Jenkins could not help himself, had to go 10 deep, but I don't think we're upset with what he chose to do. This really surprised me. Kind of blew my mind. They went with Kenneth Lofton Jr. Kenneth Lofton Jr. coming off those 10 points in garbage time against the Heat, got his career high 10 in the fourth quarter against the Heat. He is put in the rotation. Kenneth Lofton Jr. played first half minutes. First half didn't go very well. Second unit got smoked. The Grizzlies got badly outscored when Tyus Jones was off the court. It honestly made me feel like, all right, maybe they won't put Kenneth Lofton Jr. back in the second half. Maybe they'll shorten the rotation. I think probably because it was a blowout. They're like, yeah, whatever. Let's just put Kenneth Lofton Jr. back in. Let's keep the rotation the same way we had it. Let's get him some more experience. But in the second half, a lot of his minutes lined up with those Gorgie Jang minutes, and the Grizzlies cut into the lead big time while he was on the court. Kenneth Lofton Jr. finishes with 11 points, career high, 7 rebounds, a career high. He pulls down 3 offensive rebounds, had a big putback in the fourth quarter, had a nice that rebound off of a missed free throw. We got to see Kenneth Lofton Jr. play legitimate, real minutes, and I was very encouraged by what I saw. It helps that he picked up the slack from Santi Aldama. Santi Aldama in the Spurs game was just 1 out of 8 from the field. He did snap his streak of not making any three-pointers, but again, only 1 for 4 from 3. Aldama's numbers have really, really tailed off. He is now 1 for 14 from 3 in his last 5 games. He did not attempt a three-pointer against the Warriors. In Santi's last 22 games, which is an arbitrarily chosen cutoff just based on how the stats were looking, when the stats started getting bad, that's when I cut it off. But still, in his last 22 games, Santi is 28% on three-pointers. He's brought his overall three-point percentage down for the season to 34%. He was making 38% of them in his first 45 games. So Aldama has not really been shooting the basketball very well. But in the Spurs game, you had Kenneth Lofton Jr. picking up the slack. And we did not see Kenneth Lofton Jr. play against the Warriors. They did, in fact, go with a tighter rotation in that important game. Will he play against the Mavericks? Your guess is as good as mine. I will probably guess yes. We might see Kenneth Lofton Jr. play in the first half again. Let's now take a quick break for a word from the sponsor, and I'll be back and continue to talk about probably primarily the Warriors win, but no promises. I'll probably have some more stats about the Spurs game as well. Fast Break Breakfast and Grits and Grinds are now video podcasts. Fast Break Breakfast, hosted by me, serves up serious NBA analysis in a not-so-serious way. Plus, this show, Grits and Grinds, which you're listening to, you know is for the obsessed Grizz fan that wants on- and off-court updates and analysis all year long. You can watch these shows now on the respective YouTube channels. So subscribe to Fast Break Breakfast, subscribe to Grits and Grinds at youtube.com. You can download each episode at grindcitymedia.com or Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your shows. All right, the win over the Warriors. We always love beating the Warriors. The The Warriors have now lost 11 straight road games. They have a perfectly symmetrical 29-7 home record and 7-29 road record. By the way, the Warriors have the most road losses ever for a defending champ. Thanks to Twitter account NBA Crazy Stats for that one. The Grizzlies recorded 35 assists against the Warriors. They're now 11-1 this season when recording at least 30 assists. The Grizzlies made 12 three-pointers in the first half of this one. The Grizzlies now this season, when they make at least 13 three-pointers, they are 22-3. When Dillon Brooks makes at least 45% of his shots this season, the Grizzlies are 16-1. The Grizzlies have only lost once in the last 2 seasons when Dillon Brooks makes 50% or more of his field goal attempts. Should Dillon Brooks have more than 17 games this season where he's made 45% or more of his shots? Of course. Absolutely, of course. But still, hey, if Dillon Brooks makes his shots, the Grizzlies, very, very tough to beat. Now, the made three-pointer thing is extremely interesting. So we've highlighted they've played Luke Kennard more in the past couple of games. He recorded 31 minutes, 32 seconds played in the Spurs game. Of course, overtime helps that. But the Grizzlies, since acquiring Luke Kennard, it's not a very big sample size, but since acquiring Luke Kennard, the Grizzlies are averaging 13.3 made threes per game. That is 2 more per game than they were averaging before they acquired Luke Kennard. The numbers are way up so far. In the 8 games without Ja Morant, the Grizzlies are making 14.6 made threes per game. Does that mean anything? I don't know. It is notable, although I will not draw any conclusions about it just yet. Like a lot of people are pointing out, hey, the Grizzlies are clicking now without Ja. I don't think those things are related. Are the Grizzlies clicking right now? They've won 5 of 6. That is a fact. Are they playing better? Dillon is playing better. Making three-pointers certainly helps. Bane has been awesome, but he is awesome. Jaren has been awesome, but he is awesome. When I look at the individual games and I wonder, like, are we rolling right now? I don't know. It's what the story has been all season. The Grizzlies win home games. They don't win road games. The one loss in this was an ugly road loss to the Heat. Like, they've won 5 of 6. 2 of those games, great home wins against the Warriors. Anytime you beat the Warriors, that's great. Of course, you're doing it at home. And the Warriors are terrible on the road. The Grizzlies are now 11-0 on home games played on either Friday or Saturday. So that's 2 of the 5 wins. The other 2 wins were against the Mavericks when they didn't have anybody. And then you beat the Spurs, but of course you fell down by 29. I don't know how to judge. I don't know how to weigh, hey, we came back from 29 down. That's awesome. Versus we fell down by 29 to the Spurs, which is terrible. So, I mean, if the Grizzlies come out and play a healthy Mavericks team, you know, Kyrie is questionable. He did play in the Mavericks last game. Luka is questionable. He did not play in the Mavericks last game. If the Grizzlies beat the Mavericks again, all right, we're playing good. We're playing better. But so much of it just feels like, well, we beat the teams we were supposed to beat. I'm not ready to, throw the parade or whatever. But going back to the Grizzlies-Warriors stuff, I thought this was interesting. Yeah, there's no comparing the overall franchise success of the 2 teams. And the Grizzlies have lost in the playoffs twice to the Warriors, where the Warriors went on to win the NBA Finals. I mean, Warriors have four titles. They're a dynasty. Dillon Brooks does run his mouth ridiculously. We find that entertaining. But the Grizzlies have had success in head-to-head matchups with the Warriors. Warriors fans will say, well, we've never considered the Grizzlies to be a threat. We don't care about the Grizzlies that much. Okay, fair argument. But in the Klay, Draymond, Steph Curry era, since all 3 of those guys have been on the Warriors, the Grizzlies are now 23-29 against them, which is a pretty respectable winning percentage. 23-29. I already pointed out that the Grizzlies have won 7 of the last 8 home games against the Warriors. So if you want to just shorten it to, all right, let's talk about just when Ja Morant got here. Since the Grizzlies drafted Ja Morant, the Warriors are 3-8 when they play in Memphis. So the Grizzlies almost always beat the Warriors when they come to Memphis. Since the Grizzlies drafted Dillon Brooks, the Grizzlies are 10-4 against the Warriors in Memphis. Again, even though the Grizzlies knocked out the Warriors in the play, and there's no comparing the franchise success, and there's no comparing regular season matchups against getting eliminated in the playoffs. But I find the stats to be fun, which is why I bring them up. Like this one is fun to me. Do you have any idea what Dillon Brooks' record is all-time head-to-head with Steph Curry, including the playoffs? 6-8. Dillon Brooks all-time against Steph Curry is 6-8. That is highly respectable. That includes a 3-3 postseason record. 2-3 last year in the 6-game loss to the Warriors. Of course, one of those wins, Dillon barely played. He got ejected. And then they 1-0 in play-in situations. So technically, Dillon is 3-3 against Steph Curry in the postseason. These are not individual matchups. Steph Curry is one of the greatest players of all time. That stat is just fun. Please repeat it to others as long as you give me credit. Klay Thompson in this game, minus 30. Gotta love that. Klay going back to his patented 4 rings trash talk. Maybe find some new material, Klay. The Warriors did have 30 second chance points, which is an incredible amount of second chance points to have. Good thing the Grizzlies held on. And finally, I guess we can wrap up with the Grizzlies. Their fourth quarters have been improving. It's been obvious you've been watching the games. The offense comes and goes. Yes, these stats are somewhat watered down by the 42-point fourth quarter in garbage time against the Heat. But actually, that fourth quarter hurts their defensive numbers. In their last 6 games, where they've won 5 out of 6, the Grizzlies are only allowing 21.2 points per fourth quarter. That's an elite number. If we want to throw out that garbage time against the Heat, they're only allowing 19 points in the fourth quarter. That is, the Grizzlies are allowing 19 points in the fourth quarter of their last 5 wins. That is an incredible number. Like against the Warriors, they went on a 23-1 run in the fourth quarter. They held the Warriors to 19 points. This is coming off allowing 41 points in that third quarter where they kept fouling, just constantly fouling. I mean, the Grizzlies gave up 30 second chance points, like I said. The Grizzlies only went 11 for 17 from the line. They only generated a handful of turnovers. I mean, you think about playing the Warriors, you assume one of the reasons you normally beat the Warriors is because the Warriors love turning the basketball over. I mean, the Warriors did have 13 turnovers, but the Grizzlies only generated 5 steals. But Grizzlies made 18 three-pointers. Grizzlies did not turn the basketball over themselves and hand out those 35 assists on your way to 133 points, and the Grizzlies get a big win. The Grizzlies play the Mavericks on Monday night. Like I've been saying, come to that playback room, playback.tv/faststrikebreakfast. The Grizzlies right now, if the season ended, would face the Mavericks in the first round. Of course, the standings are very, very fluid. All these teams are super tightly packed. It looks more than likely the Grizzlies will finish third, although, of course, that could change. The Grizzlies have a very manageable final 12 games. The Kings do play a few more road games, so possibly the Grizzlies will end up with that 2 seed, and then you play the winner of the 7-8 play-in game. But it's going to be an exciting run no matter what, and the Grizzlies are going to position themselves to hopefully have a little bit of postseason success, and we can kind of shake off the rough, last 6 weeks or so. The on-court product has turned around. even if Dylan Brooks got fined for shoving a cameraman. Why in the world did he shove that cameraman? I have no idea. But the on-court product is coming around with the wins, and if this team can get their bodies back, get their players back, get their minds right, they'll continue to be very, very fun and hopefully make some noise this postseason. Anyways, I appreciate you listening to these episodes. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Hope you have a great Monday. Talk to you soon. Go Grizz.